Hi, I'm Neil Martin,
And I'm Sally Lawson.
and today we're going to talk about how many people do you know? Because it's quite interesting, Sally, isn't it? I was reading in the media that the average person knows, I think it's about 600 people.
600, I know, yeah, it's quite a low number, isn't it? It's quite frightening.
Well, 600, if you ask someone to name the 600 people they know, then it seems like quite a high number. But actually, if you think of all the people you come in contact with, if you're active in business, etc., you're going to meet a lot of people, and 600 sounds relatively low. But that's the average number of contacts that most people seem to maintain.
Well, I guess if you're in the more traditional world where you probably work with 20, 30 people, you probably got family, probably another 40, 50 people on top of that, member of a squash club or play tennis, and you've probably got your professional advisors, accountants, solicitors, and you can see how it sort of gets to that sort of number quite easily. But I'm from more of an online world now, and I feel that's a really low number because obviously with social media you can reach literally thousands, tens of thousands of people. So I think the world's changing.
Yeah, I think that's more of like a Rolodex world, right?
Yeah. The way it used to be.
Absolutely, where you take out your little book and write people's names and numbers and things in it, as opposed to them all being in your phone. And
in fact, do you remember the business card holders?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the world's changed a lot since then. And you're right. If you think of how many contacts have I got on Facebook? How many have I got on Twitter? How many have I got on LinkedIn? How many people are watching my YouTube channel? How many people am I connected with on Instagram, on Snapchat, on Periscope, and on it goes. Those numbers can escalate fairly quickly.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting. I was reading something the other day as well. It said that a contact on your database as a person that's in business or a business is worth £3 per month. Is that a figure that would relate to you?
Well, yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, because actually if you take the number we just said about sort of the 600 or so contacts, and you would say, okay, so 600 contacts at £3 a month is £1,800 a month. If you were to kind of take that up, you're into probably £20,000 to £25,000 a year, which is about the average salary.
I suppose it is, yeah.
So the average person with the average number of contacts earns the average salary. That kind of makes sense. But if you were to extrapolate that in a different way and say, well, actually, as a business owner, how big is my business's database? How big is my network? And you were to keep taking that forward with you. How many contacts would you need to get to, say, a 6-figure salary, or to get to a 7-figure salary, a 7-figure income? And if you think about it, what's a 6-figure salary? It's going to be something close to about 3,000 contacts. And if I think back to sort of my career in sales and kind of that environment, the people that are actually earning 6 figures plus are the people that actually are good at networking. They're the people that when they go to a conference are handing out their card, are getting other people's cards, and then actually using that. Not the thank you for your card, oh, and now I'm going to spam you forever. It's it's how you build that relationship. And I think in the digital world that we're in now, it's easier to maintain those relationships, like you've mentioned. And I think it makes sense that as your kind of value grows in terms of your network, so does your net worth. The two things kind of go together, don't they?
But it's the same theory as what we used to do, I think, back to 10, 15, 20 years ago when we first started. You go out to networking events, you go meet people, you arrange coffees, you arrange lunch, you go and talk to people, you build up your network, you talk to them, you get to know them, you become friends. I even used to have parties at my house and invite all the local estate agency. That was another story. But it's the same sort of theory, but it's just using an online platform. You can do so much more of it. I can remember going to this networking event in Cambridge, miles away. We drove for hours and hours and hours, cold, rainy, horrible, dreadful night. Got there and I was speaking and there was 10 men and a dog there. Literally 10 men and a dog. One of them was a guide dog. And I just think, crikey, a lot of effort, hotel costs, petrol costs, all that sort of stuff to get to these 10 people. And it was later that night, went back in the hotel room, I just put this post out and I shared it on a few groups and a few different pages and whatever. And I totted up how many people I've got that post in front of, and it was 20,000 people in 5 minutes from my hotel bedroom. And when you have one of those light bulb moments, and it's like, hold on, Sally, you've just driven hours and all this cost of 10 men and a dog, can't really count the dogs, of 10 people. versus 20,000. What are you doing? And for me, that was 2011. That was a light bulb moment. It's like, Sally, you need to get yourself online. And I think that's, if we can find ways to create more and more and more and more and more contacts using online mediums and tools, it works. I mean, think about chefs. You were talking about the difference between different chefs the other day, weren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think of a head chef in like a leading hotel, salary-wise, probably 40 to 50,000 pounds. Maybe in central London it might be 100,000 pounds, but that's a kind of rough value. Whereas look at somebody like Jamie Oliver, and his worth is in the millions. His income is in the millions. And why is that? It's because of the status he's achieved, and that status really has come about through his contacts, his network, and the number of people who know who he is. It's building that following, and never has it been easier to do that than it is right now. There was a time, in fact, if you think of Jamie when he started his career, he got on TV. That's how he got known. You don't need to get on TV anymore. You can basically start your own TV channel using tools like YouTube. You can start your own kind of news media outlets using things like WordPress and writing your own blog. You can create your own radio station by starting a podcast. All of these things where you used to have to rely on somebody else to publish you, suddenly you can publish yourself.
And what's really interesting about that now as well is I know a lot of my BBC interviews have come from them reading my posts, watching YouTube videos, going on Twitter, whatever. The actual journalists that are looking for stories and looking for TV interviews are actually looking on these mediums now to find people to interview. And I know you've had the same sort of thing, haven't you?
Absolutely. And we've got friends who have too. Our friend Sammy, for example, was recently on the BBC multiple times in the same day as a branding expert talking about Lego. Because when the BBC were looking for someone who could talk about that subject and the impact of something Lego were doing on their brand, she was the person that kept coming up in their YouTube searches and their Google searches and everything. Yeah, it's the same thing. If you're perceived as an expert in your industry, even if outside of your industry no one's ever heard of you, when suddenly there's a broader interest in your industry, it's your door that's going to be knocked on.
I know one of our elite room delegates as well. They actually wrote an article about if you won the lottery, what would you do? And there was, I think it was Euro Millions, it was something like £50 million jackpot, and the press were looking what to do if you won that sort of money, and actually got him in onto the BBC to do an interview. Amazing. Just for one blog.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, the reach of these things can be absolutely phenomenal.
And sometimes hard to predict, and I think the one of the key things about something we've talked about extensively before is the need to create good quality content and to create it at the right time. So to have the context around the content that you're creating that means it's relevant to what's going on in the world. And I know in that particular example you just mentioned, that blog post was put out at the time that big Euro Millions jackpot was there. So, it was the right moment for the right article that meant that the traditional media, when they were looking to do something around that same thing, were just looking for stories that were already out there and were appropriate.
So what can we say to help people to build up those contacts online? What sort of advice? I know you've created, something like 1.5 million hits on your website in 18 months and tens of thousands of people on your groups and your Facebook accounts. And you've just got this whole media hype following thing going on online. What would you say to help people sort of build up those contacts?
I think the biggest thing for me is add value. I've said this before in when we've chatted in other videos and stuff like that, but it's add value. Give content that people actually want to read. Things that are actually useful. Don't make it about me. Make it about.
Don't try and sell.
Absolutely, but make it about you. And here's what I want to share with you that I think will be advantageous to you, beneficial to you. If you're being voyeuristic and it's all me, you might have a bit of an audience, but it probably won't last very long. If you're hard sell all the time, buy my stuff, again, people like to buy stuff, but nobody wants to be sold to. I like to buy stuff, but I don't like to be sold to.
Let it in your time.
Absolutely. And when I want to buy stuff, I'm more likely to buy stuff from people that I trust, people that I know the industry or the product or whatever it is that I'm interested in.
I feel now that a lot of people that watch my videos, they're looking for information. It's almost like now we're a new era. If you remember when we were at school, a similar age, you had to go and get a book out from the library, or you had to go and ask for a brochure to get posted to you, or you find somebody and ring to ask them for advice. Now you can find anything on Google. The answer to everything is Google. So for me, what I find is so many people that consume my content are just looking for answers. And if you're there with the answer to their problem, they'll consume your content. They then know who you are. They then may consume more of your content, and eventually they'll possibly want to buy for you. Maybe not, but if not, they might be a raving fan, or they just like you and appreciate the fact that you've helped them and added value to their life. So for me, about building the content is exactly the same like adding value, but being relevant to your target market. I think that's also important because you've got to make sure that your content that you're creating is relevant so that they become active friends on Facebook or followers on Twitter, whatever the case may be. Relevant and add value, two key things, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to pick up the other thing you said about having to go to the library versus, Google, everything's going not just online, but it's going mobile. So, most people are like that far away. They're like an arm's reach away from their mobile phone. And if you want to know something, you grab your mobile phone. If you're planning to record an interview, for example, and there's a couple of statistics you're not sure of, you probably grab your mobile phone and check them. It's a normal kind of thing people are going to do. And I actually think as well now, the education system kind of needs to change a little bit too, because getting kids to learn facts and statistics and all this kind of stuff about history, they got Wikipedia, right? They got Google. Why do they need to know some of that stuff that, unless it's really relevant to what's happening for them now, they can look it up. We had to learn some of that stuff because, like you say, you had to go to the library. It wasn't easily accessible. And so if it was important or relevant in life at any point in the future, it was important that you knew it. Don't get me wrong, some of the stuff I learned at school probably has never been relevant in my life anyway. But some of what I did, was important at some point in the future, and nobody knew when it might or might not be, so it was important that you learned it. Now, I think that's changed. I think, don't get me wrong, there are some things that we still need children to learn, but I think some of the detail now, actually, they just need to learn how to find it. I think the world's changing. I think it's changing very, very fast. And I think the technology that we've got now is so different from what it was 5 years ago, which is so different to what it was 10 years ago, and it'll be so different again in 2 years' time.
One of the things we talk to our new franchisees about, and our elite room delegates and stuff like that, is about finding ways to build your network. And I think there's so many things you can do. Like you said, the world is changing. Do it offline, but also it needs to be done online. It's a double-edged sword. Where you need to be out there as a physical person, going out there into the community, meeting people, talking to people, networking, all that sort of stuff. But you also need to do exactly the same functions online. And that's how we built our database. I think it's something like 58,000 now or something like that. But really our reach is social media. 7.2 million people reached on Facebook in the last few years. 300,000 tweets have gone out. And if each one of those was watched by 10 people, that's 3 million people reached. So it's quite frightening statistics what you can reach. Imagine trying to reach 7.2 million people physically. It would just be virtually impossible. We can do that on Facebook. We can do that on YouTube. We can do it on Twitter. We can do it online. We just can't do it physically. So I don't think it's quite completely replaced the physical world. Obviously, it hasn't, but it's a great add-on to reach more and more people so that you can then utilise that network to get to know them, they get to know you, and eventually they'll want to do business with you, or you want to do business with them, whichever way it works. So it's about a mixture of the two, I think.
I agree, and I think one of the really big things there, though, is the accessibility of it and how they can complement each other. You can do a real event, a face-to-face event, and you can live stream that now. And you don't even have to pay for the technology to live stream it. There are free tools, Periscope, Facebook Live, things like that you could be using. Or alternatively, you can use paid services where people pay to attend the live event without physically being there. So if you're running a seminar or a conference or something, people can attend your event from the comfort of their own home if they're unable to travel to it. So you've kind of almost got this blend of the real world and the technology. And I completely take your point. If you're going to physically try and get to millions of people and actually be in front of them, there's not a venue that's going to hold that many people. And even if there was, half of them can be watching on TV screens because they're not going to be able to see you. I've been to some pretty big events. I've been to events with 10,000 people or more, and depending on where you're sat, it's like if you go to a music concert or something. If you're sat too far back, you're watching the screen, aren't you? You're not really watching the stage. And exactly, and don't get me wrong, you're there for the atmosphere. You know, it's the environment, it's the other people. That's what makes it a special occasion. But on the flip side of that, in terms of the quality of viewing, absolutely you can get it at home. You know, Glastonbury Festival, best seats in the house are probably the BBC. You know, it's sitting at home in your own house is probably the best seat in the house because it's got, you know, all of the different stages being streamed in real time or highlights or whatever, and it's just there. You know, and whereas to get from one stage to another with all of the people that are there can take a significant amount of time. And then you won't get anywhere near the front, you know, if you're watching the screen anyway. But people go for the experience, for the environment, and for all the stuff that's not broadcast on TV. So, you know, I'm not saying don't go to Glastonbury. Go to, you know, it's an amazing, amazing experience to go to music festivals. But there's this blend now, and I think the bit that's often neglected is even as small and medium businesses, in fact, even as, you know, a solo entrepreneur, these tools are available to you now, and it's the first time in history that that's happened.
So, assuming most business owners want to create £1 million business, there's got to be a magic number they've got to get to in contacts to get to that £1 million business.
There is, and you know, if we take what you were saying earlier about the, you know, kind of £3 per contact, you're talking somewhere in the region of about 30,000 contacts.
So is that the goal? 30,000 contacts for the listers? If they want to get to £1 million business, 30,000 contacts?
30,000 contacts plus the right strategies on how to actually engage those 30,000 contacts.
Yes, it's not just about talking to them, knowing people, you've got to be able to convert it into businesses.
Absolutely, and you need to have appropriate products for different levels. You know, because if you think about having 30,000 contacts, there'll be some people in there who are great contacts, but are only interested in your free stuff. Yeah, there will be people in there who are interested in engaging with you, but maybe have a limited budget, and, you know, will only pay for certain aspects of what you do. And then at the extreme other end, there'll be people who are like, you know, how do I spend a day with you? How do I spend a week with you? How do I get you to come and live in my house? You know, how do I get you to come and work in my office? You know, people who want to take it to the extreme other end of, I want to be immersed in your world, or I want you immersed in my world for a period of time so I can really learn everything I can from you, take your experience and use it, you know, massive momentum. And yeah, if we take, for example, someone like Tony Robbins, you know, Tony Robbins is for anyone that's not familiar with him, I mean, just Google Tony Robbins. The guy's phenomenal with what he does with NLP and transformation and stuff like that in the personal development world. Now, to work with Tony Robbins one-on-one costs $1 million. And my understanding is you get 12 hours for that. So 12 hours of his time is $1 million.
For 12 hours?
Absolutely.
Wow.
But at the other end, you know, he's got lots of stuff he gives away for free, and he's got books that are like, you know, £10, £15, whatever they are. So you know, there's this broad range depending on who the customer is, what they want to do, what they can afford to do,
it's like
and
a
what's
customer
appropriate.
journey, isn't it? They go from the free to the £10 book, they then might buy a couple of videos, or they might go to an event, and then from that they might want some mentorship, and then they're paying £1 million for 12 hours.
All of that kind of stuff. And I think, you know, regardless of what business you're in, you need to think about, if you want to maximise how to get a return financially on the contact base that you build, you need to think about what all of those different things are that you can offer. You know, so if you're, you know, especially this, I think this becomes particularly hard for some people to comprehend if they're in a really traditional business that says, well, I do this one thing. And my business is this one thing, you know, so, I don't know, I'm a second-hand car salesperson. I sell cars. That's all I do. But if you are the second-hand car salesperson who, let's just say, specialises in low-mileage cars, why not write a guide on how to buy a low-mileage car? And that might be a guide that, you know, it might be that's free, or it might be a guide that's, say, £5 or £10. You know, or write a book on it. You know, you can create these lower kind of entry point products actually relatively easy. And again, with the technology that's available, it simplifies all of that. Regardless of what type of business you're in, you just need to apply a little bit of creative thought of what's complementary to the core thing that I do. And then the same at the top end. You know, if you're the second-hand car dealer that specialises in these cars, your kind of main sort of product or service, your staple product or service, the thing you do for everybody, is selling second-hand cars. I mean, you can maybe introduce something that says, well, here's my guide on how to buy a second-hand car. And then at the extreme other end, it might be, I can source you the car of your dreams. You know, I can go out and I can find, you give me the specification, I'll find you the car, but I'll put a fee for finding the car for you.
It's a bit like Jamie Oliver, really. He's a chef, isn't he? So his choice as being a chef was to just get a job or set a restaurant and cook for a few people. But now you can watch his free videos, you can buy his books, you can watch his TV programs, you can come along to his events, you can eat in one of his restaurants, he's created a whole restaurant chain from it. He's now a TV celebrity because his passion has come across, he's used his content to get across his passion, which means he's now been put out there to fight all these campaigns. He's created a whole empire around it, hasn't he? I mean, he must be worth millions.
Absolutely, and I mean, it doesn't even stop there. He's got a party plan business. He runs a music and food festival. I mean, I know about that because I've spoken on stage at it. But there's a huge array of different things that Jamie's been able to do, where really Jamie is the brand. It's brand Jamie, and everything else comes off that. And done the right way, you can use the modern technology that's there to position yourself as that expert authority and build brands and offerings around you that are complementary to that. And if you're giving enough value, the people say, wow, what else can you do? That's how you can then really start to see a financial return for the value that you give up front.
I wonder how many people go to his restaurant, not because they like the menu or it's in the right place or even if they like Italian food, but because they've seen him on telly or they've read his book or they've seen some of his videos. I wonder. Anyway, that's a thought to leave it on.
Absolutely.
I hope you've enjoyed today and this little chat here. And if you want to watch more of our videos, please subscribe to the channel Relevance on YouTube. Thank you very much.
Speak to you soon. Why is it perceived that has no value and that it's okay to just give it to everybody? Because let's face it, we all know now that if you give your email address to somebody, they're going to send you messages.